Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Snapshot episode 39. This week, we're going to be discussing the newest season of Marvel Snap and the release of Elsa Bloodstone. KM, before I ask you how your week in Marvel Snap, I saw you achieved a very special rank, and you were able to screenshot it this time on your way up. What prestigious rank were you able to achieve on your climb up?
Okay, so rank 69, that's nothing special, in my humble opinion. Rank 69 is like, okay, you know, ha, 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 ha. I hit rank 69 with XX 69 snap points. So I hit it double. I feel like that counts more. I think that's an important thing. Like, you can't just hit rank 69. Anyone can do that, right? Anyone can hit 69, 420, 8008, 8000, 80085. Am I forgetting any? I guess 1337. Yep. Yeah, anyone can do that, okay? But can you do it while matching the numbers? Can you do it while matching the numbers?
A man of culture.
And I think it was like 8669. And the only better way to do it than that is to hit it with 9669. That's the only better way to do it, I think.
You still have something to live for at that next time. You can get the 96.
No, that's the goal.
How was the climb overall? I saw your sentiment on Twitter. So it was hard though, right? You didn't face just bots. It was a hard climb.
It wasn't a question of like not facing just bots. It's not that like I miss the bots. It's that I played the exact same people that I did when I was ranked 20th or whatever in the previous season. It's like, oh, I'm still playing them. I'm still playing the exact same people. And it's like, okay, what is the point of deranking us if MMR means nothing actually changes? Like, MMR means nothing about the experience pre-infinite is different from the experience post-infinite. There's never a situation in which I can play anyone other than this, which feels weird, right? When you get deranked in other games, it feels like the MMR is a little looser, right? Like, you're not purely matching literally the exact same people you were previously. Like, I think probably maybe 5 new people I played over the course of that time period, and the rest is just the same people. It's, you know, it's the Human Spider, it's Young Wave, it's Tanjo, it's Tripific, it's Big Baby, it's like all of my chat, basically. It's like I'm playing, that's who I have to play to get through the ranks, and it's frustrating because it's like, okay, I would like an easy climb to infinite so I can get like a sicko screenshot, right? But instead of getting an easy climb to infinite, I get a really, really hard, the hardest climb to infinite. And it's like, well, why? What is the point of that?
Yeah.
Like, if you're just gonna make it so matchmaking is exactly the same for me before and after infinite, why even derank me at all?
Yeah.
Why bother? Like, what's the point of it? It's
been like that for a long time. I know we got into the eras where you could sort of break out of the parameter on the high end and on the low end and just face bots. But back before and around the Zabu season, my infinite climb was actually just 10 people. It felt like it was such a pain in the ass. And I remember I would start the season. I would be playing, you know, trying to slowly go up my ranks, you know, actually struggling, and I would queue up Twitter 20 minutes later and Cam, boom, infinite. I'm like, this is ridiculous. I was like,
I remember that too, though, because like I remember this like, because back in the day, this is like the same thing was happening to me before I broke out on the top end. It was, I would be struggling to get to infinite, and then like, and I remember this specifically, it was Valentine and Mr. Metal were like, yo, check out the easiest infinite I got of all time. And it was just like, what the fuck is going on? Like, what the fuck is this? I remember it was Silver Surfer season, because Silver Surfer just came out. And it was just like, what the fuck is this? Why am I playing the same person 12 times and they're cruising to infinite against people who aren't very good? Why is that happening? And I guess I just don't understand why, like, if you're not going to change matchmaking, why derank us at all? I don't get it. What's the point?
Marvel Snap has really faced a sort of conundrum with its top-end ladder experience. Literally since its inception, we've seen multiple changes. We've gone through different iterations of this experience, whether it was aesthetically on sort of the face of it or actually on the back end, some things change. But it's just like we've had this sort of kind of broken system, it feels like, actually since global launch. Like, there has always been something at the top end where it's like they've taken this way of analyzing and understanding their ladder system, and they've just sort of applied that to the game as a whole and added no nuance on the bottom end, no nuance on the top end. And then you just have these like weird outlier experiences if you are on that top end where, yeah, you're facing top 10 or top 50, top 100 players to go from 70 to 100, which other people are facing literally people that have never made Infinite. And it's a weird asymmetric climb when you guys are, visually, the way the ranks work visually from 70 to 100, you guys are doing the same climb, but it is not the same at all. Like
I do want to give a huge shout out to the guy on my YouTube video who was like, oh, sure, yeah, you made Infinite day one. Isn't it a coincidence how all these Marvel Snap creators make Infinite day one? I don't believe it without a video. What? And then I could link my entire Twitch VOD where the entire climb was like live streamed. I want to give a huge shout out to that guy and to the guy who routinely comments on my Twitter posts to claim that the decks that I post are rigged by algorithms. And I don't know exactly what that means, but you're so right, dude. Keep on keeping on. I am a huge fan of you. I can't wait to see what you come up with in the future because I think you're doing great work.
I mean, they do seem like some solid level-headed takes for sure. And I can see their perspective. Yeah. Okay. Do you think there's a situation where someone who is in the top 500, or we could even, lower the parameter, top 100, potentially doesn't make Infinite because the Infinite climb is so hard?
No. Because everyone who they would play gets filtered out eventually, right? Like at a certain point, if you were top 100, the longer you wait, probably the more bots you play. I would think the longer you wait, the more bots you play would be the way I think about it. I would expect that at least.
What do you prefer as a player? Do you prefer playing just bots and sort of getting the chore over with, or do you prefer the more competitive experience? And does the competitive experience lose its potential enjoyability because it's not symmetrical and other people are experiencing something vastly different?
Can you repeat that question? I'm not sure I understand it.
So the core of the question is what climb do you enjoy more? Do you enjoy the climb where you face the bots or you face the sort of top 500 players? The hard
for the climb to Infinite, because I consider it so totally irrelevant. Just give me the bots and get it over with. Like it's just not a thing. Like this was the hardest one I've ever had, and it took 8 hours. Right? Like last season, I climbed 700 or so SP in Infinite, in high Infinite, which means my win rate had to be extremely, extremely high just to like maintain where it is. And so climbing to Infinite, where all you need is above 50% cube rate, is just a very reasonable proposition a lot of the time. I personally, I don't like the way that I feel compelled to do it. I don't like the way where it's like if I don't do it in one stream, I don't deserve to be, a content creator or whatever. I feel that way a lot of the time, and I don't like it. I think it's just get it out of the way. It's a stupid fucking thing. They have never made it actually make sense. It is always either too easy or too hard, and it's just like at this point, why even derank us?
Yeah.
What's the point?
When they deranked us 30 ranks instead of resetting us to 70 that one season, that was the best one they had, to be honest.
That was such a relaxing season.
That was the best. Because
everyone could just play Conquest. Yeah. Everyone didn't have to feel like they had to play Ladder.
Yeah. So did you use the bounce list primarily in your climb? Was that okay? So I'm just going to read that out for our listeners. The list was Kitty Pryde, Bass, Nightcrawler, Angela, Elsa Bloodstone, Mirage, Jeff, Mobius, Mysterio, Bishop, Hitmonkey, America Chavez. Do you think that this was,
for the record, replace Mirage with Iron Man?
Too bad. I love Mirage, but Iron Man does give you a lot of reach.
She was awesome, but like Iron Man is a little bit required in a world where people are playing like Shuri and stuff.
Yeah, and that goes back to sort of the OG reason that Iron Man was in the bounce list, which is you can flip the Shuri lane. You can really flip any lane basically with Iron Man. How do you feel about the resurgence of bounce? Do you feel like Elsa Bloodstone brings it together and that this is now a tier 1 archetype again?
Maybe not tier 1. I have preferred the Loki builds of it personally. Like post Infinite, I've been playing more Loki builds. I think there are like two real kinds of Elsa decks, and the first is you're like an Elsa Kitty Jeff deck, and the second is you're like an Elsa Vision Eliath deck. And the two major Elsa Kitty Jeff decks are Bounce and Loki. And the two major Elsa Vision Alioth decks are Move and Brood, and I suppose now Thanos. And the question is usually going to be, you know, which of those is the better deck, right? If two decks are occupying a similar space, they tend to be in competition until we can figure out which one is better, at which point it occupies the entirety of the space, aside from a few diehards, right? That is how this has tended to go in the past, right? Where X deck is the best at doing Y. And so other decks that do Y just sort of get pushed out.
Yep.
And those are the two like camps of Elsa decks right now. A guy who watches me apparently just won the Impulse tournament with the Brood Patriot Vision Alioth list that I put on Twitter and YouTube, and said that they put Vision in because of my logic. So first of all, hell yeah, bro. And second of all, like, yeah, like this is where I've been thinking about this a lot, because like the best Elsa Vision Alioth deck is probably an important thing to figure out. And I suspect that it's the Brood deck, but the Thanos is a lot more exciting. Because it just is. Like, everyone loves Thanos. I love Thanos too. But like I worry that Thanos's niche, like it falls within that niche of being an Elsa Vision Brood deck or an Elsa Vision Alioth deck. And it's like, all right, I need a compelling reason to play this beyond I really like Thanos, right? And I do. I really like Thanos.
Yeah, enjoy playing that.
I would say that, like, I mean, I'm just a Loki sicko at this point, where like I'll always think he's better than everyone else does, because like I played 800 games with the card or whatever, and the win rate is like 66% or something. Like I've almost never had a bad session with Loki. It just has never happened. And that's you know, remarkable. I think it's very rare for that to be true.
So the biggest thing holding back the Bounce deck is just that it's potentially not the highest point slam deck. I mean, this is. It's
also just that, like, it's not that it's just not the highest point slam deck. It's that it's fundamentally a little bit more vulnerable to counterplay than a Loki deck is. Like, Bounce gets omega rolled by a correct Alioth. Omega rolled, right? Like, it is a deck that is a throw priority, do this kind of thing, right? Like, it gets really, really hammered by that card. And it gets really, really hammered by Wave if you're not playing Mobius, which I obviously am, but not everyone is, right? It's a very fragile list. And it's also, I'm not positive it actually does points better than the Loki deck. I think it does maybe on average do points better than the Loki deck, or at least over the course of a conquest, I think it will do points better than the Loki deck. But most of that's down to just having Iron Man, right? You just have Iron Man. And then the question is, do you win the heads up? And I think the more you have Iron Man, the less you win the heads up. And yeah, I don't know. I also want to shout out Human Spider. Did really well in the Impulse tournament with just literally old Loki, because he doesn't own Elsa, which is just incredibly based. But yeah, like Loki, my instinct is that Loki is still the best deck right now. Some form of Loki. I think it's the one that I put in my best decks video. Who knows? But I think that if you're a really good player, that's the place to be, personally.
Let me read that out. This list. So Kitty Pryde, Maria Hill, Snowguard, Angela, Collector, Elsa Bloodstone, Luke Cage, Mirage, Jeff, Mobius, Loki, America Chavez. Is that the list you're referring to?
Yes. Note that Mirage is an Omega flex slot, where it's just like, I like Mirage. And that can be like Cosmo or whatever, or just like some other thing, whatever problem you want to solve, that's the place you mess around with it, right? And what I like about that deck is it's running Luke Cage, it's running Mobius, it has this proactive game plan where you can do Elsa Kitty stuff, or you can do Collector Loki stuff, but you also have all this tech, which means there are just fewer bad locations. Running those cards is basically like having Legion, right? Oh, Dream Dimension, that's one-sided. Elysium, that's one-sided. Necrotia, that's one-sided. Negative Zone, that's one-sided, right? You just have so much control over that, where it's just like, oh man, that's a lot. That is a lot of control to have over a game. You get to choose how things go down. You have Snow Guard in there. You have all these cards that give you options. And of course, you just do a lot of points when you do Loki Collector or Elsa, Angela, Kitty stuff. You just do a lot of points. You're kind of immune to Shadow King thanks to Luke Cage. It's just good. It's just a bunch of really good cards. And that is the kind of thing that I like playing. Dynamic decks that have dynamic game plans, depending on matchups, and a lot of answers, and a lot of ways to ask different questions. So, yeah.
Interesting that you say you like dynamic decks when I definitely recall your archetype in Magic the Gathering being more aggro oriented, right? Do you think that I was reminded of
I
it
liked aggro because it made you ask questions.
Mm-hmm.
That's what I liked about aggro. You put your opponent on a clock. You get to say, do you have this? You take an aggressive position, right? And it means that the right play often is saying, I'm going in. And that's the kind of deck I like to play. But in a game like Marvel Snap, there's not really a deck where the right play is to say, I'm going in. That's not a thing. You don't have it. And so that itch is unscratched for me. Because most of the decks where the right play is to say, I'm going in, are decks where that is a 50-50. Like Galactus type stuff. And I don't like those. I think the thing that I liked about the red decks is that the correct play was to go, I'm going in, because the odds were in your favor. But in a 50-50, I don't think the odds are in your favor. They're kind of definitionally not in anyone's favor. And there's no deck that gets to do that here. So I prefer the kind of deck that gives you options and allows me to leverage what I'm good at, which is addition.
I think that the Shuri deck is the most like a red deck in the current meta, probably. But I wonder if you went back to Magic after playing so much Snap, if you would still be a red player. Just a little bit kind of pontificating here. I don't know. What do you think about Elsa Bloodstone? Do you think this is sort of a staple 2-drop in Marvel Snap now?
Yes.
Snap now? Yeah. So talk to me about why it's so powerful and so flexible.
Numbers good.
Flexibility good. Why can it be played in so many decks?
Fuck flexibility. Numbers good. Like, she's like a 2/8.
Mm-hmm.
That's really good. Like, why can it be played in so many decks? Because every deck in Marvel Snap does the same thing, and that is put points on the board. And Elsa is like a 2/8. And most decks that are interested in putting points on the board would love to run a 2/8. You need a very specific reason why you wouldn't do that. Like you're a Shuri deck or whatever, right? Mm-hmm. That's why you wouldn't run it. Like you need a reason not to run the card because it's a 2/8. It's just very far above rate. It's not broken the same way Loki is, but it's like, okay, this is like a little too strong, probably. Like look at these the numbers are just too good. It's the kind of card that in another game would be like not broken at all, right? It wouldn't even be very good. But in Marvel Snap, for the same reason that Loki was good, which is all decks are kind of doing the same thing, Elsa is really good because all decks are kind of doing the same thing. And so it's very hard to find a deck that is like, oh, I don't want a 2/11. Yeah, I hate running a 2/11. I can't do that. Like most decks, it ends up just being like, oh, yeah, I will go a little bit out of my way to play a 2/11. That's awesome, right? Like that's a super cool thing to do. And so as long as you're going to just like, even if you're just going to like fill up the board, like that's the whole Raison d'etre of the Brood deck, right? Where it's just like, look, even if you're not doing the vision stuff, if you just fill up the board, she's like a 2/11. That's really good.
That's ridiculous.
Yeah. And it's just like, okay, so you get your 2/11, you get your 3/6, you get your 4/12. Like, that's your deck, right? You get your movable 8/11 power guy, right? You get your movable 5/11, and then you just Goliath them. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, they're probably dead. And even in that case, she's like a 2/8, right? She's like a 2/8 because you get it off the Goliath and you get it off the Vision. And it's like, oh, well, yeah, that's really good. Like, all right, sure.
Yeah, every now and then it feels like we're getting cards
like the numbers
released.
Are bad.
Yeah, the cards we're getting cards released, like some of these cards that break into the meta. I feel like Loki was slightly different because Loki is less of it's generously statted at 3/5, but it's less of a numbers paradigm, more of like, hey, I play your deck, but cheaper.
That thing I do is messed up, right? Like that's what Loki is. But like Elsa is just like
it's above rate.
Oh, these numbers are
they're heinous.
Good numbers.
They're heinous.
Yeah,
they're unreasonable because the 2/5.
They are.
Like the 2/5, which I would say is probably the floor, like generously the floor.
I feel like I've never seen an Elsa played where she is anything less than that.
And that's disgusting. That is disgusting. You need like you're definitely. I feel like the only counter to Elsa, right? And it's not even really a counter because counter's just not that effective in general. It's like something that punishes your opponent for playing into those lanes completely. But then you still have to beat the 2/11, right? You still have to beat them. So let's say like what's a really generous 2-drop, like a 2/4. That would be like a crazy generous stat line. So you do 11 minus 4, so you still have to beat 7 power value with whatever card you're punishing them for playing 4 in a lane.
It's Tarmogoyf, right? Like it's not. That's an analogy that nobody's going to get because that card kind of sucks now. It's, I don't know, name whatever undercosted beater exists in every good deck of every card game, right? It's just the numbers on this card are unreasonable. Or maybe not even unreasonable, right? Like, I mean, I think they are, but it's not like she's OP in that sense. She's just like the kind of card everyone would run. It's not like she's broken. She's just best in slot, you know? It's like Jeff, where it's like, yeah, it's like, I guess it's not that bad. It's just the best card you can run.
So do you think she's not OP? Because I feel like if I told you
I don't know,
a couple months ago,
what do you?
It's too early, right? It's too early. But if I said a couple months ago, hey, got a new card for you.
They're printing a 2/11.
2/11. You'd be like, what? Excuse me? Because that's crazy. I mean, even if I said 2/5, you'd be like, then why would I play any of my other 2-drops?
Yeah, I mean, why would you play any of your other 2-drops, right? Like, but the thing is, there's actually like a million different 2-drops that are being played right now. It's just they're all being played with her, right? Mm-hmm. Like all the decks that I like playing run like her, Mobius, Jeff, Luke Cage, right? just a whole lot of dudes where it's just like, oh yeah, we're in the 2-drop tech meta now. Mm-hmm. Used to be we were in the Shang Enchantress meta. Now we're in the Mobius, Luke Cage meta.
Feels like a different game. Yeah, Shang Enchantress meta so long ago. It doesn't seem. Yeah, she's pretty strong, to say the least. She reminds me. I do think
she's like aggressively strong, but I don't think she's like,
not oppressive, right?
I think the biggest case for nerfing her is that she's a season pass card and thus inherently pay to win. Like that's honestly my biggest case for nerfing her. If she was just a card, I'd be like, yeah, that's fine, whatever. Like if everyone had her, I'd be like, sure, I don't really care.
Dude, I still get targeted by ads from Marvel Snap. That's Ben Brode going, what if we had a game where you couldn't pay for power and you didn't have all the cards? Wouldn't that be awesome? It's just so outdated at this point. It's like we specifically don't let you buy the good cards, and it's like, oof, that's not the Marvel Snap.
We don't let you buy the good cards, but we do make sure the cards you can buy are very good.
Yeah, honestly, she reminds me of Surfer, not in the sense of exactly Surfer's doing, but she just seems like she's like a couple
in the sense
points.
Of the number here is like one higher than it should be, probably.
Yes, yeah, and then if you toned it down, it'd just be like a good card. Okay, let's get into this card balance update, October 3rd, 2023. So we had Mojo. We had a text change on Mojo. It basically says if both.
No, it's a functional change.
Sorry, that's what I mean. Functional change, ongoing. Instead of both players having to play 4 cards, it just says if they're both locations are full.
It works on Space Throne now.
Exactly. So it's a buff. What is the Iwatu change? It's literally too small that I can't.
1/1. In deck, you can see the right location.
I mean, there's no way you're playing Iwatu, but how do you feel?
Nope.
Do you think is that an upgrade? Is that a?
I wanna have a conversation about the value of information in Marvel Snap, because there is a certain type of player who is good enough to know that information is valuable, but not good enough to understand the opportunity cost of getting that information.
Can I tell you an example? Can I tell you something?
I was going to talk about Howard, but go nuts.
It literally happened to me yesterday, so that's why I have to tell you about this. So I was playing.
Nice legs, bro.
Oh,
did anyone else see those?
No, I'm cropped out.
You shifted. You cropped out. Oh yeah, nice shorts.
I'm pantsless. So I was playing Lorcana, so different card game, completely different fundamentals, etc. But there is a card that you can play on turn 3 that takes the top card of your deck and puts it into effectively your resource base, your mana, etc. But you don't get to see that card. And the person I was playing against goes, what if you could play a card that would let you see that card so you make sure you don't get rid of a bad card, or an important card in your deck? And I'm like, well, that's not really a thing. But why? Yeah. I was like, well, if you could literally get that information for free, yes, that would be nice. But the card that's on top of your deck is equally as likely to be the card that you need or the card that you don't need as the card that's below that. They are of equal possibility to be the card, right? So by looking at that information, you actually don't change anything. You're just you would still play the card on 3 and accelerate the resource. Like, it's just correct. And so talk to me about your, it literally happened to me yesterday. And then the player was just like, they just like, but what if you could see it?
There's a certain type of guy who understands that information is valuable. And I think a bit of the contradiction here is they see me saying something like this and they think I'm saying the information isn't valuable. And what I'm actually saying is the information is not worth the cost, which is to say it is not worth running a 1/1 in your deck. It is not worth playing Howard the Duck, right? Like, the Howard the Duck example is pretty classic, right? Last time I saw Howard the Duck in the deck, my opponent's Iron Lad hit it. And it's like, oh, this card you run to make your Iron Lad better actually just made your Iron Lad worse because you ran it. Like, I think it comes from, not to get too, psychological here, it comes from a desire for safety and 100% knowledge.
Interesting.
It comes from a desire to be fully in control. And that is a powerful thing to feel in a card game that is dominated by randomness, but to feel like you know what's going to happen, to feel like this information is valuable to you. And in Snap, I will say the information is more valuable to you than it is in other games because of Snap equity, right? There is actual value in information. But again, the opportunity cost on all these cards, it just simply has not been worth it. And when you have to pay a significant cost, when they make one of these cards that says, do that thing and also, draw a card, do that thing and also gain an energy, do that thing and also do something that impacts the game state, then it'll be good. But when it's just a 1/2, a 1/1, and you're only getting information, it is not worth the opportunity cost of playing the card.
I have a theory of where it comes from. So my theory, because I feel like it's not necessarily always associated with a person who's newer to card games, but I feel like it tends to be with players that are newer to playing card games. And I think it comes from evaluating card games purely based off context rather than based off value. I think when you look at card games based off a quantitative exchange of value and you take out the context of your game plan, what's on the board, etc., that is not the end all be all, but that is definitely step one. Step one is, how do I outvalue my opponent on a card for card basis, on a point for point basis? And then you add context. What a lot of players end up doing in card games is they add context before value. So you'll see somebody, let's take Lorcana, for instance. Like, and I know that's not the card, but this is where you can interact. So your opponent drops a creature or something that that, like, that's the creature that I lose to. That creature is really hard for my deck to deal with. And in order to remove it, you would have to cast 3 of your damage spells. And you're like, okay, kill it. Okay, I got rid of that scary thing. But you don't understand, like, they'll skip the step where they realize that they just 3-for-1 themselves. And effectively, they will probably lose the game as a result of that. It's just getting caught up in this sort of the context of what's actually on the board, rather than how do I extract as much value out of my cards as possible and deny my opponent from doing that. Because I think you could take all context away, evaluate every decision on value, and you win a vast majority of games by just doing that. That's my theory.
My theory is honestly that, I went through a little bit of, like, I think it's just like there's a certain type of player who sees good players making decisions based on information and doesn't think they're good enough to do that. Like, to intuit this stuff, right? To be like, well, I do this anyway. And so they want to know for a fact whether something is a good play or not. And I think that it represents an inability to just accept that you have to gamble in a card game.
Inherent fail rate, right? They will try to avoid inherent fail rate. Like, you'll come into many situations across multiple card games, pretty much any card game, where you will make a decision that is 100% objectively correct, and you will still lose the game. And these players will be like,
I had a clip that was me playing into I put 2 Devil Dinosaurs in a danger room because the only way I lost was if both of them died. And if I went mid with them and then put something else into the danger room, I would lose if they played anything mid. So I put them both into the danger room. Of course, both of them died, but that's like a 90-something% chance to win.
Yeah.
It was the right play.
And the lizard brain behind is like, you idiot. you're like these intrusive.
No, it was the right play.
Yeah, I know.
I was infuriated, but it was right.
I think like as a, like the human, I don't know, like the human element, like the lizard brain comes in and is like results oriented. Why would you, and you kind of get this like really skewed sort of retrospective on the decision you just made. You're like, okay, maybe I wasn't supposed to take that risk. But ultimately, if you accept that in some games you will have an inherent fail rate, like that is just part of making the correct decision. Yeah, I think that, that sort of leads to some of this. So Uatu, in short, I know because we went off a little bit there. Not worth. Not worth. Although knowing the right location would be great.
There is like a use case for him in Conquest where like you can actually know what your opponent's deck is, and if the location screws them, you can get some snap equity. But on ladder, I just think he's kind of unplayable.
Yeah, I wouldn't use the slot for that. How do you feel about like, so a card that was really popular in Conquest initially was Kang, and then it saw zero play.
Right. No, I mean, don't get me wrong. Like people, I do think 95% of the time, maybe 100% of the time, when people are like, oh, this is good in Conquest, what they actually mean is it sucks.
But if I can outplay my opponent over 20 cubes, then it's got a use case.
Like it's usually like a good player being like, oh, this is useful in Conquest, and it's like, well, yeah, but is it more useful than a card that doesn't suck? And it's like, no, but like that's what I mean when I say useful in Conquest. Like I just don't want to be like, oh, this card's 100% useless, because I do want to be like, oh, here's a use case for it. If you're like the one Uatu fanboy listening to this, go nuts.
Yeah, C1 Uatu. We could do it. All right, Mantis. Mantis changed from a 1/2 to a 2/3, 2-drop meta. Cable is now went from a 2/2 to a 3/4. That's a pretty significant change. Mariah Hill went from 2/3 to 1/2 and has a functional change that says add a random 2 cost to your card now, not a 1 or 2 cost. What are your thoughts?
No, she's good now. She's good now.
What?
Yeah, I mean, like, she's better than she was for sure. She's like a way better Agent 13, basically. Like that's what Maria is now. I think it's Maria Hill. I don't know. Shout out to Robin from How I Met Your Mother. It's probably the best behind Snowguard of the card generators, I would say. And maybe Agent Coulson, but Agent Coulson's value is lower to me now because we can't run Quinjet because of Mobius. And Agent Coulson was usually strong in concert with Quinjet and Loki, and Mobius makes doing full 7s with Loki a lot worse, and of course doing the Coulson plan with Quinjet a lot worse now too. So right now, I think she's probably the second best card generator, depending on how you evaluate the 2s, because God knows I love me some Sentinel, I love me some Mirage, but she's quite solid. Maria's quite solid.
Do you think all these cards nerfed in the context of Loki? And trying to make that.
No, Maria was buffed.
Okay, Maria was buffed. What about Cable and Mantis? Are those?
Yes.
Okay, so at what point? Because I know we talked to Glenn on this podcast, and Glenn is very, very aware of this design buff and nerf kind of philosophy of getting rid of the engine rather than all the cards that are affected by the engine. And it seems like we are chasing after supporting cards.
Oh no, I don't think this was because of Loki. I thought you were asking if they were nerfed in the Loki deck. And the answer is they are worse in Loki, but I don't think this was because of Loki. I think they just like, when you look at those cards, like Mantis sucked and was unplayable, and she kind of still does.
Yeah.
Maria Hill sucked and was unplayable, and Cable kind of sucked and was unplayable. So at least just play around with it, right? Like people are gonna get mad at me for that Cable take, but I am fairly convinced that he was mostly cope outside of snap equity in Loki mirrors, right? I do think probably either of the other 2 were likely better cards in retrospect to run, and the other 2, by which I mean Sentinel and Mirage. Cable's fine. I don't know if you were like a sicko who needed an absolute edge in whatever games where he actually gave you your opponent's Loki and you could snap them. Sure, but that didn't seem to happen a lot. And most of the time, he's just drawing them maybe closer to the Loki. And I don't really know.
Yep.
It's hard to evaluate him. I think he's just sort of neutral in that sense. At a 3/4, he's just worse than Coulson, though. But like, what if he was a 3/5? Kind of interesting.
What if he was a 3/5? So we put him up against Loki. We put him up against Polaris.
Yeah, what if he's a 3/5? Is he just like really good then?
Is he really good?
I don't think he's just really good.
So he effectively draws a card.
3/5 draw card is awesome, right?
Pretty good.
Like, that's like an amazing card if he's like a 3/5. And like I think, hey, let's at least let's see what that happened. Like, can we get that to happen? Is that too OP now? Because I feel like in the early days of Marvel Snap, 3/5 cable would have been omega busted. But we're in a world of like 2/11s now. So
So holistically, if you look at our journey from even closed beta to now, even though I guess we kind of have quantitatively power crept a bit, but Marvel Snap as a game has evolved in power. Like we were doing crazy stuff. We were doing crazy stuff back in beta and on launch as well. But do you think we power crept at all?
I think overall, like point totals have not been power crept, but I think efficient units have been.
211?
Yeah. So like what I mean is there are more wildly efficient units than there ever have been before. But overall point totals, like the big super uber broken shit, has always gotten nerfed. Always, right? There are like Polaris is kind of an embarrassing card to play now. And that used to be like a staple, like 3/5 with upside.
People used to play Maximus in just regular decks. They were like, the 3/7 is worth it. And they wouldn't, some people played on 3, which I was like, well, you can't draw your opponent's 2 cards on 3.
They've done a good job of making the game such that like the hugest explosive outliers, Sarah Negative back in the beta, Zabu, Surfer, right? Like these massive explosive outliers, the early Thanos,
or OG
where it's just like
Sherry.
the things they're doing are just like fundamentally ridiculous, right? They've done a good job of keeping that in line, right? Like you look at the best decks right now and Shuri is still one of them after the nerf, right? Like that's telling of the overall power level relative to now. Like if you took OG Shuri into this meta, she'd probably kill everything. Like she would probably be the best deck and it wouldn't even be close, right? You took a bunch of stuff into this meta, it'd be very, 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 very powerful. So what they've done is they've kept the top end of decks down, but the like rate on cards has gotten better and better, I think. And I think that's the thing that sticks out to me is like there's a lot of just really good rate guys now.
Yeah, and it seems that they often get released. I mean, glad you talked about this. They can get released at a higher power level, and they're happy to tone them back rather than having to do the opposite, because the opposite is much more of a feels bad for the player base. Unless the card is absurdly broken.
I ran a poll on this, and it was like, would you rather cards get released broken and then nerfed, or released bad and then buffed? Because neither is a good option given the way card acquisition works, because it's like, okay, they buff Lady Deathstrike. What if she's broken and then you can't get her because she's not in boxes, right? Like, what if they back buff a card and it becomes insane and you can't get it? Isn't that a much worse use case? Isn't that a much worse case than having the Battle Pass card be good, right? Because I think the Battle Pass card being pushed is actually the best case, because that's the one you can get for only $10. Every other card, I don't know if you can get that for $10. But I do wonder about it. I really do wonder. I am hopeful for the future in terms of balance, but it is sort of hard, right? If you're a card game designer, to make cards that people are going to be excited about while avoiding, with all due respect, Dakins.
Your cards have to be powerful. I was listening to a podcast, Mark Rose.
And Dakin is good, but he's just good. And I feel like they're aiming higher than just good on these cards.
It's something that plagues Flesh and Blood, to be honest, because it's an eternal card game 3 years in, and the new sets have less than ideal impact on the constructed meta.
Can I just say that the way you guys rotate cards out is absolutely bad shit?
So I think from a theory perspective, it's like, if you looked at it as this idyllic way of rotation, and you didn't account for all of the variance and BS that might occur from it, it looks actually nice before you think about it.
No, it's the exact kind of thing where it's like, this sounds great, and then you do it, and you're like, this is the dumbest idea anyone's ever had.
Let me explain it to people.
There's a reason why no one else did it.
So basically, Flesh and Blood has a rotation. They still do bans. They don't aggressively ban, but they still ban in specific scenarios. But ultimately, it's a hero-based game, and you tend to have like 4 or so heroes release a set. But basically, after heroes won enough events, it will naturally rotate out. It's a system called Living Legend. So that system, if you don't think about it at all, sounds great. And then when you think about it, you're like, this is the dumbest shit I've ever heard. But then, paradoxically, the biggest shakeups to the Flesh and Blood classic constructed metagame, and the best shakeups, the most refreshing, have been from Living Legend. Almost none of it has come from new sets. All of the new sets have pretty much fallen on their face, and then something is rotated, and it's actually gotten interesting. So paradoxically, it's actually the only thing that makes Flesh and Blood interesting.
But that's like Stockholm Syndrome, right? Because it's the cause doesn't mean that's the most effective way for that to happen.
I know.
Like
I rag on it a lot. Like I rag on it.
In another game, wouldn't that be like the role of the developers to step in when your game fucking sucks?
So it's hard
like,
because
this is the thing. Because like the whole point of rotation, if you're a game developer, the point of rotation is so that your new sets don't fucking suck. It's to bring the overall power. Like, there are 2 solutions if you're releasing new cards. One is power creep, and the other is to bring the current environment down. And that's what rotation is. And if you're not actively rotating it to keep the power level down, if you export it to some other system so you don't have to feel bad, like you're not responsible for it, like, oh, that's just what the rules say, you're abdicating responsibility over your own environment, and you're just throwing money out the window too.
Yeah. The most unpopular opinion I have in Flesh and Blood as a content creator is that I think the game would be infinitely better if it rotated. So, like I was about to say earlier, I was listening to a podcast. Mark Rosewater had Richard Garfield on to talk about Arabian Nights. This is the first expansion of Magic the Gathering. And they talked about
Phyrexian Dreadnought, bro.
They talked about why you have a block-oriented structure, why you have a rotating game, why they did it so early. It's because if you don't, you literally have to power creep, or your players become jaded and pissed off because the new cards do nothing. And
there is no choice.
Yes.
You have 2 choices. One is to lower the power of the environment, and that's what rotation is. And the other is to power creep. That is it. Those are the only options you have, or you release Dakins forever. Mm-hmm. That's it.
And if you release Dakins, like, you want to talk about what really pisses a player base off. It's not releasing Surfer. It's not releasing Zabu. It's not releasing Loki. It's releasing Dakin after Dakin after Dakin after Dakin. That will really get a player base angry pretty quick. The thing is, they got to release cards that are interesting to people, whether they're interesting because they do new things, like Loki did.
Hold on. No. We got it. It's like, interesting. That's card game designer talk right there. Release card. They don't have to release cards that are interesting. There's a lot of dog shit interesting cards. What you mean is strong.
Strong. Yes, they need. Well, I think that you're right. Loki had a unique effect and was strong. But yeah, they need to release cards that have an impact on the game, and have an impact on the competitive metagame that can be playable without you making
make you feel like it was worth spending your money on, right? Like when you think of it in that sense, how do you make someone feel like this was worth spending their money? And card game designers love dancing around this shit. And as someone who has like some vague aspirations to become one, I should really get more familiar with how to do this. But like, they love saying stuff like, okay, different cards are for different players. Certain types of players derive satisfaction from different things. And like, all of that is 100% true. It's all true.
Yes.
But no one likes losing.
Yes.
Nobody.
It's true, but it's on the hierarchy of needs of a card game player. It tends to fall quite a bit lower than how do I win? Then how do I win?
They want to win with the thing.
Yeah.
Right.
I think
Johnny doesn't necessarily, like, Johnny, the combo player, he wants to assemble his combo. Why does he want to assemble his combo? What does his combo do? Does he want to do the combo, or does he want to use the combo to win?
Yeah, the combo to win. And most, like anybody listening to this, anybody that's participated in the life cycle of a card game probably has encountered or is thinking about the question of, isn't that just carrot on the stick? Do you lead yourself into bad scenarios doing that by power creeping? How do you keep them interested? And do you have to make broken cards and then people feel bad because the power cards are the ones you buy and then the ones you have are bad? And all of that is true. And that happens to be there really isn't an answer to that question. That's something that these card game designers figure out on the fly.
I don't think that's the kind of thing that I don't know. I just think that I can't think. I'm not the genius. I don't have another answer. You either release Dakins or you release Lokis, right? Ideally, what you do is release fixed Zabus, right? That's where you want to hit, right? You release. I think Mobius might be aiming a little high.
Mm-hmm.
I think maybe Mobius probably aimed a little high, but you release, let's say High Evos. He was at least in the ballpark, I think. High Evo was at least in the ballpark. The changes they made to him were super minimal, and he was very good for a very long time. Very good for new players to pick up and run with. Thanos's even, right? I give a lot more. Here's the thing. I give a lot more leeway to cards that are their own archetypes, because I think those cards benefit players moving into the higher collection levels more than basically anything else. If you aim too high on a Thanos, I will forgive it. If you aim too high on a High Evo, I will forgive it. It's fine. This is a live service game. You can fix it, right? That's fine. When you give players a bunch of cool stuff, when each of these cards is 7 cards, I'll forgive you for getting something wrong. But when you make a 2/11, I can't call it anything other than, oh yeah, that's power creep. That's what that is, right? And that's fine, right? I get it. It's a necessary thing, but I don't want to fall into a cycle of printing Silver Surfers and nerfing Silver Surfers. And I worry that, with all due respect to Elsa, she's just not cool. There's nothing. Loki was cool. Thanos, cool. High Evolutionary, cool. Elsa is just numbers.
Do you think Elsa would be almost equally as playable if it said, if it had -1 point on its condition? So it said +2 power.
No, I mean, I honestly do think she might kind of suck there. I get why they did the 3, right? Because it's if you're only hitting it twice, she's a 2/6, and maybe that's good, but she's not very exciting at that because her design is just numbers. That's what has to be pushed on her, right? And when you look at there's a lot of really powerful but not particularly exciting cards. I think Mobius is kind of the headliner of wow, that guy's really good, but fundamentally he's just a hate bear. And it's okay, okay, sure. And I think honestly, I think they deserve credit with Loki, because they made this incredibly powerful card that is very simple and easy to understand. And it's this insanely fun card. Whereas Elsa is this card is good numbers. You play this card because it is good on rate. And I think that's sort of a different kind of to me, it's just I don't hate it. It's just I think that's actually probably the first time they've done that since Silver Surfer, where it's just you're not playing the card because of what it does. You're playing the card because the numbers are good.
Yeah. If I had to pick an evil, I would pick the evil of them releasing powerful cards that shake up the meta, then get nerfed down. It's just a more refreshing, and refreshing is a weird word to use, but it's a more refreshing experience as a player of the game, rather than dud card that are just getting pushed out on pure numbers. I'd rather be pushed. Although there is a toxic relationship there where you are paying for the new card, you're paying for power. Ultimately, if they release a season card that has no impact on the meta, it's kind of a snoozer, and it's it feels like we missed for that season pass, I think. Yeah. All right, this week's Bend and Snap. It's a little bit different. It's not a question, Cam. It's actually just comment of the week. This is from Raymond Hartwick. And they say, they wrote a pretty long one here. It looks like they thought about it a lot. It says, Galactus sucks and deserves all the hate.
Nice.
That's it.
Agree, based.
I just love it. It's just
yeah, Galactus, that's correct. Galactus does suck and does deserve all the hate. I do want to be clear, though. I've noticed like some weird shit where it's like, I'll see like, oh, Galactus players, they're so toxic, or High Evo players, they're so toxic. And I promise you that's not true. Like, I promise you, I will go to war over this, that people are people. And Galactus players are not, on average, I would wager, more toxic than the average Marvel Snap player.
Yeah, I mean, that reminds me of when I first started playing card games. When I encountered someone playing Bomb Warrior Control, I was like, this person is a psychopath. If you played Hearthstone and you've been through that loop, I was like, holy shit. Like, I could be playing a game 20 minutes, instead we're sitting here for 60 plus minutes and going to fatigue. I was like, this is a terrible experience. But, as I've aged, I'm now that player. You become, the infinite stared back at me, Cam. But if you want to get your question read out, you can leave us a comment on YouTube, and we'll get it queued up for next week. Usually we go with questions. It's kind of comment of the week, but I thought this one was hilarious, and it definitely got some interaction from other Galactus fans who chimed in and gave their thoughts on that statement. All right, Cam. Last thing I want to talk about is the Brood deck. So I'm going to read it out.
Yo.
Forge, Elsa Bloodstone, Mr. Sinister, Jeff, Patriot, Brood, Silver Surfer, Absorbing Man, Iron Lad, Vision, Alioth, America Chavez. Does this take the cake for best deck in the format for you?
It's up there. I think it's really solid. It's just, really predictable, but it's probably the deck I had the highest win rate with. I would go so far as to wager. One of the things, there are two questions I have for myself about this deck, and one is, can I get Iron Man in here? Because that just seems awesome. And the other is, can I get Wasp in here? And I don't know if I can do both. I don't think I can. Yeah. But I think, like, okay, if we went minus Silver Surfer plus Iron Man, is that just like the shit? Are we just fucking balling now? Are we just like the best there ever was? Because like Iron Man in a Brood lane after an Elsa is fucking disgusting. Like Elsa and Iron Man, it's so gross. Iron Lad and Iron Man is so gross. Like there is just like you just like Elsa and Iron Man, and they're just like, oh, okay, I guess I lose that lane. Because like you have, even if it's the what's his face lane, the Absorbing Man lane, right? That's 34. It's 17 times 2. It's 34. And it's just like, oh, okay, I die. Like, I'm out of here. My bad. And like, if you Iron Lad it, it's like obviously one of the most ridiculous possible things. So I think I would try that. I think I would try, minus Surfer plus. It's either Surfer or Patriot is the issue. And Patriot is better in your low rolls and Surfer is better in your high rolls. And I haven't figured out which one I would do it with. But it's definitely one of those two, because Patriot has the upside of working with Mr. Sinister, right? And that is really important when you do like your, Forge Mr. Sinister Absorbing Man plays. That's like a really important thing, that Patriot still works with Mr. Sinister, because Silver Surfer does absolutely nothing there. But Silver Surfer has like this weird upside of you can Absorbing Man it. And so there'll be games where you go like, I'm going to Forge Silver Surfer on 5 on this Comartage, and then I'm going to play an Absorbing Man on that Silver Surfer, and I'm just going to win the game. And that's like, Silver Surfer has a little more synergy with the deck when it does its thing, like Brood Abs, and a little less synergy when it doesn't. And I really haven't figured out what the actual swap is supposed to be.
I hate to detract to another design tangent, but I gotta ask. Like, as Galactus gets nerfed and kind of leaves the metagame, people have to find a new card to hate. Do you ever think that card becomes Alioth? Do you think Alioth runs people into...
Why are you even asking that question? Of course it does.
Yeah, okay. So that's... Yeah, I don't know. It just feels like one of those cards where it was overshadowed by some other cards in the metagame, but as they exit, Alioth, I think, will just piss people off more and more. It's just one of those cards...
I think I should move it to 4.
Okay.
That's my big take, which is it'll do two things. One, it'll make people feel like they should stop playing it. That's important. 2, it means it loses to Doombots, Silk, and hopefully they'll also buff Captain Marvel to 5. Right? I want them to do that. That's the specific thing I want. I want them to buff Captain Marvel to 5 and take Alioth to 4. And then it's like, oh, okay, suddenly this card is not just like not like it's unbeatable now, But suddenly it's like, I honestly kind of feel like you have no excuse. Like suddenly it's like, all right, look, if you're losing to this, you need to be doing different things with your deck, right? Like go put a Captain Marvel in it, like do a Silk thing, play a Doombot, what have you, right? Like, and they know that this interaction is powerful, right? Like they are very aware of how +1 power can make these cards worse, right? Like one of the things that I never noticed that I think Glenn pointed out was Mr. Fantastic got a lot worse after Jeff came out, right? Because Mr. Fantastic was no longer solo winning those lanes, right? Mr. Fantastic got a lot worse after Jeff came out. We're actually kind of in a like power creeping how much power we can move meta right now, right? Between Jeff and Elsa and Vision, there's just like a lot of ability to move shit around.
But that makes the game more interesting in my
things
opinion.
like that.
I like that.
There's like that's what's happening right now is like that seems to be, and that's why I try to like that's why I like the Brood deck because I feel like it's the most efficient deck at doing that. It's like, look, I'm either gonna Forge Brood Absorbing Man you, or I'm gonna Elsa Brood Absorbing Man Vision you, and it's just like, all right, I got you, dude. Like I got you. That's just too much shit. And then I'm gonna Alioth a lane. And that kind of deck is just, I think, the best at being that weird mid-rangey bullshit, right? It's just the best at doing it. And I'm generally, I would say, if you had to pick one deck to play, it'd be that or Loki. I'll be experimenting with Thanos, but I don't think Thanos is going to end up better, but we'll see. Yeah. Or Shuri, I think. It's literally impossible to ever have a good argument against playing Shuri.
I want
like,
to read out Shuri.
It's actually impossible to convince me that playing Shuri is wrong ever. You just can't do it. It's always good.
It's just kind of, yeah. I mean, Shuri's one of those decks where it is both mind numbing in a good way and a bad way. I mean, there's not a lot of nuance to that deck. I'll read it out for people. 0, Ebony Mott, Armor, Mobius, Lizard, Sauron, Shuri, Typhoid Mary, Taskmaster, Vision, Red Skull, America Chavez. Yeah, Shuri is a deck that I've played a lot of, especially in the past. And I don't know, the simplicity didn't bother me back then, but I think when you can be doing Loki stuff, it's like, it's a hard sell to play this deck. And especially if you're telling me Thanos is playable, I've not played this Thanos list in this meta. But yeah, I mean, this is one of the least cool things you can do in Marvel Snap, but it does number check decks. Like it is hard to beat. Yeah. This is kind of the number checking deck. Do you think is it potential?
This and Brood?
Yeah. Which one do you think is the better point slam list on the Delta? Like which one's
between this and Brood?
Yeah.
Okay. So like, there's actually like a really specific thing going on with Brood right now that I want to call out, which is it used to be a deck that would sincerely lose a bunch to Loki, and Brood right now is better into those Loki decks than it used to be because every Loki deck currently is just doing Elsa stuff too. And the more you're an Elsa deck, the more you're flooding the board. And the more you flood the board, the worse the cards you get from Brood are. Like that's actually why I think this deck is better now, which because all the Loki decks are doing the stuff that I'm talking about here, like Maria Hills and whatnot, right? They're flooding the board. And they don't really have ways to benefit from a hand of like, you know, Iron Lad, Patriot, Absorbing Man, Silver Surfer, whatever, you know? Like, it's just like, oh, I can't do anything with this. I just make like a really awkward turn 5 play or something. And it's like that specific interaction with the Brood decks where they're just finicky enough that the Loki decks are no longer just wiping them off the map, I think points it in their favor a little bit.
Why do we still play Armor in the Shuri deck?
Alioth.
Is that a good enough?
Yeah, you don't want to get your shit task. You want to get your Taskmaster Alioth.
Mm-hmm. And that's okay. That's good enough of a use case because I figured like does anybody play Shang-Chi anymore?
No, it's for Alioth.
Okay.
Like it's like you just don't want to get your fucking Taskmaster Alioth. Like that's really kind of it.
Yeah, makes sense. All right. Well, that's all the lists. You want me to bring up the Thanos list? I mean, you did.
I can't opine on it efficiently yet. It's I don't know. We're good.
We're working on it. Okay, next week we'll come back. With
we're cooking.
We're cooking.
We'll see.
Yeah, until you play that. Why is the stone? It's avoiding my mind right now. What is the stone?
Soul Stone.
Yeah, Soul Stone. Enjoy that.
Did you play that Soul Stone?
Enjoy that.
I can't believe they did that. I can't believe they've done this.
Why though? There's no reason. They just did it out of nowhere.
I mean, the reason is because of a deck exactly like this, right? Like they were like, we do not want this shit to be a thing. We do not want you to reliably prop into Dino into Goliath. Fuck off. Like, that's why.
Yeah, people are like, oh, Galactus, and then you're playing Profix.
Yeah, like that like it's that, right? Like it's just like that's such an annoying thing to do.
Mm-hmm. Awesome. Well, if you are listening to this podcast and you enjoy it, the number one thing you do to help us out is leave us a review. You can do that on Apple Podcasts or Spotify. It helps us out so much. There's a video version of this on YouTube at youtube.com/the_snapshot. Hit that like and subscribe while you're there. And Twitter's our Brendan APG, KM Best MS. KM, your Twitch schedule, sir.
Evenings. I stream in the evenings. You can watch Marvel Snap in the evenings Eastern time on my channel. It's always a fun time. I have a mic arm now. You can hear me better.
Yeah.
I no longer have a sore throat from yelling loud enough for my mic to pick up. I can talk into the mic. I can do ASMR.
No desk pounds. I'm telling you, it's just you're a different person without it. You see the desk pounds, lift the mic a bit.
Hold on.
Are you just moving your
camera? Did any of that come through?
No.
I was pounding the desk to see if
none of it comes through. You're clipped onto another desk, I think, too, right? What do you have any goals for this season, particularly when it comes to climbing? Give it another
no. I want to be a little more laid back. Oh, I'll tell you my goals. I need to pay attention to Conquest this season. That Iron Man is so sick.
Yeah.
That Iron Man is so sick. Oh my God. I ended up just cashing in my Conquest tickets to get the Odin. I didn't have enough, so I spent 500 to just start an Infinite and cash it in so I could make sure I got the Odin in the last 3 minutes before the season rollover. So my goal for this season is to not do that again.
My goal this season is you just get that from accumulating points though, right? You don't have to achieve any sort of...
Yeah, so what I did was I just started and immediately forfeited as many conquests as the tickets I had. I was like, all right, I got like literally 2 minutes, so let's APM through this.
Nice. Awesome. Well, thank you all so much for listening. We'll see you next week.